The Fort Dalles Museum includes many buildings, work areas, and artifacts that will bring you right back to pioneer days. While you're there, you may experience some extra bumps, whispers, and ghostly hosts. Who supposedly haunts the Fort Dalles Museum? Let's find out. Welcome back to Investigating the Northwest. This channel is dedicated to exploring the mysterious, haunted, and historical of the Pacific Northwest. Currently, we're exploring the haunted locations in the Dalles, Oregon, a historical city by the Columbia River. In fact, it was the end of the land-based Oregon Trail. This site was originally called Camp Drum, or Fort Drum soon after, and was constructed in 1850. The Dalles was located at the very end of the land voyage of the Oregon Trail. A traveler could continue on to the Willamette Valley, but had to travel by barge up the Columbia River. Fort Dalles was constructed soon after the 1847 Whitman Massacre in Walla Walla, Washington. One of the curses the white man brought to Native American cultures was disease. The Cayuse Indians killed the missionaries Marcus and Narcissa Whitman because the tribe thought the measles outbreak had actually been poisoning committed by the Whitmans. Unfortunately, the white settlers had a stronger immunity to measles and were able to recover, whereas many Cayuse tribe members died during the outbreak. Since the natives died and the white men did not, the tribe felt it was intentional poisoning and killed the settlers. This was not the only instance of white travelers bringing disease to the native tribes, and it created tensions and even wars between the two. As Walla Walla no longer was a stopping point for Oregon Trail travelers, Fort Dalles was created to help the new immigrants settle in, or to make the transition to the valley, and also to serve as a location of negotiations between the settlers and the native peoples. As gold was discovered around 1854, even more settlers would come and increase the tensions and the violence. In 1855, the Treaty of 1855 forced the Native American populations around the Dalles to forcibly relocate to the Warm Springs Indian Reservation. Then, between 1955 and 1958, the Yakima Wars broke out, and the government stationed the 9th Infantry at Fort Dalles during these battles. Fort Dalles began as a single log fort. After the Yakima Wars began and the army was stationed there, the commanding officer built a commander's house, barracks, a surgeon's quarters, and stables. But after the wars ceased, the native tribes had either been decimated or driven further east, so the fort was no longer needed to enforce peace or wage war with the native tribes. In 1866, fires destroyed the commander's house and the barracks, and in 1867, the fort was abandoned altogether. Only the surgeon's quarters still remain. In 1905, the town of the Dalles took over the fort and converted it into a museum. And as its life as a museum began in 1905, it is the oldest historical museum in the state of Oregon. Across the street is the Anderson Homestead. It was built in 1895 by Louis Anderson, a Swedish immigrant. It was originally located on a farm about 20 miles south of the Dalles. It sat empty after 1950 until it was relocated in 1972 to become part of this historical site. The Fort Dalles Museum is featured in the book Ghost Stories of Oregon by Susan Smitten. Guests have reported feeling watched. Some feel a menacing presence in the surgeon's quarters. Others have reported seeing the apparition of a Native American man. Some theorize that the hauntings are Native Americans who died in battle during the many battle in the 1800s. Others claim the Native American artifacts drew spirits from the former owners. And even others claim the fort was built over an Indian graveyard. Which one, if any, of these explanations could actually be true? Might the fort be haunted by Indians who died in battle? Not likely. There was no jail or place to house prisoners of war, so there's no reason to believe Native Americans died on the location. The locations of the Yakima War battles were much further away in Washington state, so there were no battles near Fort Dalles itself. I would imagine the spirits of the Native Americans who died in the war would be more likely to be seen on the battlefields rather than a distant fort. Was Fort Dalles built on an Indian graveyard? Well, this is fiction. Oh, this harkens back to the days of the Amityville Horror, when that source of many reported hauntings and poltergeist activity were the infamous Indian graveyards. Camp Drum, later to be known as Fort Dalles, was built on the site of the former Methodist Waskapom Mission. Wasco Indians helped to build the mission in 1838, so they're not going to allow the missionaries to build over one of their graveyards. The mission ceased its function in 1847, and around 1850, the site was sold to the U.S. military, and soon after, they built Camp Drum. Could Native American or pioneer spirits be attached to the artifacts in the museum? This, in my opinion, is the most likely explanation for the hauntings. It's said that historical buildings and objects hold an energy of their former owners. The museum currently has on display many artifacts from Native American tribes and the Oregon Trail. It has tools of the time period, antique wagons and vehicles, and historic photos. There are so many Native American artifacts housed within the dining room of the surgeon's quarters. I definitely wouldn't be surprised if there are lingering Native spirits attached to many of those items. Hello, little Kit Kat. The Fort Dalles Museum is located at 500 West 15th and Garrison Street in the Dalles, Oregon. It is open daily between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., and there's a small fee for admission, different for adults, seniors, and kids. So if you're looking to visit the Fort Dalles Museum, you're going to be spending a day in the Dalles. I highly recommend taking the trip up to the side of the hill and visiting this really amazing historical site. Thank you so much for joining me today to learn about the haunted Fort Dalles Museum and its fascinating history. Don't forget, if you're interested in learning about the mysteries of the Pacific Northwest, of exploring fascinating locations and discovering local legends, please do subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to receive an email whenever a new video is released. Thank you.